Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I'm your disheveled goblin host, Daniel Greene, and today we just have a thickum boy of fantasy news to get through. I've been told by other people in the media space that I've talked with that cover news that oh, January, February is the slowest time of year.
So that was a lie.
Not in my experience. That has not been the case. In fact, the last episode of Fantasy News was the best performing ever. So thank you so much, everyone who made that the case. I really appreciate it. And without any further ado, before we get the news, new merch line is dropping. As you can tell from the shirt I am wearing right there. Not shirt, sweater. This is going to be our retake on the best-selling tee we had in one of our merch drops, the Plot Armor tee, with it in the sweater format for the chilly season with an illusion stitching down the side. It is, again, we've constantly been hunting every single merch drop to find the coziest, highest quality stuff through our partnership with Fourth Wall, and this is the coziest sweater we've managed to make yet. And that's not where it ends. Consistently in my comment section, people have been asking for a, in my opinion, allegedly shirt, because I say it every single time I try and dismantle a AI company, and that's a good idea. So we have also decided to make an allegedly, oh wait, that's blocked. To make an allegedly shirt, specifically featuring a dark wizard saying it to a light wizard, as I think they're spilling tea to each other. And shout out to our artist, Missy. Always want to credit them. They did such a good job. These designs are going to be available for you today. So if you'd like to go ahead and check them on out, just head on over to danielbgreen.com. Now, let's get into the news. And the new format of Fantasy News is supposed to be one huge story, book reveals, and then a bunch of other news stories. We had 3 gargantuan stories, all worth taking the prime spot in the front. So I'm just gonna do that. Starting with one that is probably going, there's so much cat hair on this mic. Hold up. Pips just loves rubbing this mic. That is a very bad lint roller. It seems that one of the big 5 publishers will no longer be asking authors to obtain author blurbs for their books. Specifically in a statement released for Publishers Weekly by Sean Manning, he said, "Well, there has never been a formal mandatory policy in the 8 years I've been with Simon & Schuster imprint. It has been tacitly expected that authors, with the help of their agents and editors, do everything in their power to obtain blurbs to use on their book cover and in promotional material. I have always found this so weird. The argument has always been that this is what makes the book business so special, the collegiality of authors and their willingness to support one another. I disagree. I believe the insistence on blurbs has become incredibly damaging in what should be our industry's ultimate goal, producing books of the highest possible quality." Summing it up by saying that authors feeling obliged to write blurbs for their friends can create an incestuous and unmeritocratic literary ecosystem that often rewards connections over talent. And not gonna lie, I saw this and my immediate thought was, thank God. No offense to anyone who do the little one-sentence blurbs you get on covers, but they're always so unhelpful, and I know for a fact sometimes that those authors don't even read the books. It's just their friends, so they say a thing and they put it on. And I have also had, without my permission, quotes from my reviews pulled and put in books, which is fine. I have had no problem with that and kind of just been honored, to be honest. But at the same time, does this practice really sell books? Does anyone actually go oh, this author I've heard of, or says this book is good, so therefore I'm gonna... I just don't believe in it. I don't think it's ever been a huge driver of book sales consistently. I'm sure there are
outliers.
If you get a dedicated tweet from Stephen King or someone like that who's this horror book's great, that's gonna move stuff. But just these quotes splattered places, as honored as I have been to see people choose my words to put on their books, I just don't personally believe they're very effective. And when I have been asked to actually give blurbs, I've fallen into the same trap that I know many other authors asked to do have as well, which is you're restrained to 1 or 2, maybe 3 sentences. And so you end up sounding ridiculously repetitive and you can't get into detail. So kind of selling this pitch for a book you do ends up just being redundant. So if this practice died. As much as there is stuff going on in the publishing space that kind of upsets me, this practice going the way of the dodo wouldn't be one. I would just, all right, bah. And also as someone who has reached out to authors in the past to do blurbs because I was told I had to do that before putting out a book, it's awkward. It's genuinely awkward to be like, hey, I know you're busy working on your own books. Can you read my full-ass book and tell me your thoughts so I can sell it? I don't like doing that. I don't want to do that. Ew. I say this as I'm about to try and bring a book to trad. And I'm probably going to be asked to do it. Oh, fuck. Well, if my publisher asked me to do it, here's my honest to God thoughts on this practice. And in other humongous book sales news, Onyx Storm has shattered records for the last 20 years in terms of a book's opening sales numbers, because the third book in the Fourth Wing series, or the Imperium series, has in the first week sold 2.7 million copies.
Wait, that's a lot of books.
And there's actually a post on the r/fantasy Reddit that did a really good job kind of contextualizing how gargantuan this is. Shout out to Wordhead for putting this into context and kind of getting the full success of the Imperium series across when they said, Onyx Storm itself is the fastest selling adult novel published in the last 20 years, shifting 2.7 million copies in the first week on sale. Onyx Storm saw Bookshop midnight opening launch parties and other events that haven't been seen since the release of the final Harry Potter novel in 2007, without the dual adult/child appeal of that book. And this is with the context of the Imperium series as a whole selling 12 million copies so far. For comparison, Yaros' sales in 2 years are approaching half those of Brandon Sanderson's non-Wheel of Time books in 20. Sanderson has sold 40 million books, with over 12 million of those being 3 Wheel of Time novels. For approximately 28 million sales of his solo work, Yaros has sold approximately a quarter of the total sales of her colleague Sarah J. Maas, who has sold over 40 million books in 13 years. 12 million is approximately the same number of books that George R. R. Martin sold of his Song of Ice and Fire series before the TV adaptation. The only author who can be said to have a more impressive debut was Patrick Rothfuss, who shifted over 10 million copies of his debut novel The Name of the Wind alone, though nowhere near as fast, but Rothfuss's career remains on hold.
I'm like, what do you say f*** me for?
And she is doing these numbers pre-adaptation. Don't get me wrong, the adaptation is coming, but holy smokes, my God, I knew Fourth Wing was big, but
You should see me in the crowd.
the only thing I would disagree with, and this is pointed out in the comment section on this post as well, is referring to this as Rebecca Yarros' debut. She has written romance novels, but this is her debut series into fantasy romance. But also, I wonder if Yarros will be able to maintain this momentum and dethrone Sarah J. Maas eventually as the Queen of Romantasy. I am interested. This is now, in my dumb, overly fantasy reading head, a game of houses. But then in the just final piece of mega news to kick off this episode of Fantasy News, the e-book space is continuing to blow up in terms of book sales, with a prediction coming out that the e-book market between the years of 2025 to 2029 will grow by up to $14.5 billion, according to Tech Nova. And the big drivers for this push in the market, as noted in this report, are going to be the continued adoption from consumers for e-reading devices. I was, as you've probably seen if you stuck around here on the channel years ago, very much so just preferred not to use them, but even I have to admit, I am starting to, if I physically read a book, do it on an e-reader more often than not, just purely based off the ease of being able to throw it into a backpack, walk it around town, and it being slimmer and simpler. And in a similar vein, they are predicting that 45% of this growth will be originating from North America, because boy oh boy, we here in the North Americas like our devices. And an additional driver pushing consumers here is just how many big boys in the tech world are taking note and trying to get through, whether it is existing things like smartphones or putting out additional products like e-readers, more and more of their existing consumers to start using their devices for reading habits. There is a competition happening to see who can continue to grow in the space the most. And while Amazon has a significant lead over everybody else, heavy is the crown. We are seeing more and more players, big and small, continue to take shots at trying to remove more and more of Amazon's significant market share. For example, Bookshop.org has now officially confirmed that they are going to be selling ebooks with up to 100% of the profits going to indie bookstores, who since it started selling physical volumes in 2022 has already given more than $35 million to indie bookstores. And one of the big angles of this that I think is going to be very frustrating for consumers and a driving force of who's actually going to be able to make a dent in Amazon's current domination, which we've gotten into before, link to that video down below if you want to check it out, is restriction of platforms and ecosystems, how difficult people are making it to sideload books outside of purchasing through their specific bookstores. And that specific mixture to me start screaming of piracy, and I am afraid we could start seeing piracy become more of a problem than it already is in the book selling space. Because as tech people come in to try and restrict and capture market, that encourages misbehavior as frustration through restrictions increase from consumers to just go get the damn book however they want to and put it on their device in a way that's simplest and easiest and cheapest for them. And exclusives, oh, that's gonna make it happen. But as we're sitting now, it seems the future of the ebook space is going to be a battlefield. But okay, before we get into another big story in terms of Dungeon Crawler Carl news, let's go ahead and get into the book cover reveals of the week, and we have some sexy ones, and one that oddly terrifies me, and let's start with it, and that is going to be Ragwort from author Sam K. Horton. From Solaris Books, they have said in 2024, Sam Horton's The Aethan Legacy began with the deliciously dark folklore Gorse. In October 2025, the story continues with Ragwort. The stunning cover illustration is once more by Veronica Park. And in like a very similar way to that one fear that's like a bunch of dots or holes on living flesh, seeing plants grow from bone like that kind of terrifies me. I don't like looking at it. It's a beautiful cover. I have looked at it. I'm not gonna right now. But from Tor Books, we also had a cover reveal for the mega popular sequel in the Legends and Lattes series for Brigands and Bread Knives. With art from Carson Lowe-Miller, we've had this ultra cozy cover drop. But that's not the biggest takeaway from this announcement though, because the tweet also included the snippet return to the cozy fantasy world of Legends and Lattes with a new adventurer featuring fan favorite foul-mouthed bookseller Fern. And with a distinct lack of a certain character on this cover, this is a bigger shakeup for the Legends and Lattes series than I saw coming. I'm really interested in this now, especially with it already being noted earlier from Travis Baldree. This one might be a tidbit darker than the previous entries. I'm excited to see where Legends and Lattes is gonna go. But then over at Blue Sky, we had a cover drop from Saga Press, and this might just be my favorite of the week. Behold the stunning cover for The Lost Reliquary by Lindsay Ely, a propulsive fantasy about one divinely blessed warrior's quest to commit deicide. The Lost Reliquary is out this October. Pre-order your copy now with art by Galen Dara. And this kind of like, I have no better word for it than papery art style. It just kind of looks like it has a texture to it. I just have a preference for. I think it's really neat. And the color choice of being like crimson and white, mwah, mwah, double keys, very pretty. And a character wielding double hand size. Practical? I have no idea, but cool, absolutely. But in the final cover we are going to be talking about this week, coming out June 3rd of 2025, we had the cover drop from Del Rey Books for The God and the Gwynson.
Daniel, love of my life, you are engaged to a near-native fluent Korean speaker. Why do you do this to me? The word you're looking for is 귀신. 귀신. 귀신 is the word for like phantom or ghost in Korean. So the title is The God and the 귀신.
By Sophie Kim. The swoony sequel to The God and the Gumiho.
The God and the Kumiho.
is coming this summer with a gorgeously mystical cover to match, with cover design by Bellina Huey and color illustration by @SijaHongArt, who I absolutely recommend you check out the Instagram of. Bangin'. But this takes us to the Dungeon Crawler Carl news, which I'm even a little bit sad to have to cover here because I know how much it sucks to have something like this leak. But yes, it has been confirmed that Dungeon Crawler Carl will be getting a webtoon adaptation because Amazon screwed up. We have learned from a post on the DCC subreddit that TLDR, this should not be out there in the wild. If you pre-ordered this, I apologize, but it'll likely get canceled. So yes, there is a webtoon comic based on DCC coming. Once the first season is complete, it will be released by Vault and distributed by Simon & Schuster as a physical graphic novel. We don't have a date yet. We don't even have art for the webtoon yet. No, that absolutely won't be the cover of the graphic novel. I wasn't gonna say anything, but thank God. And yes, someone somewhere f***ed up in getting all the placeholder information ready for when there really is a pre-order. Yes, I'm irritated by all of this because I saw this on this subreddit. Apologies, the listing should be going away soon. And I actually feel guilty covering this, but I have to. It's news, it's out there, people know. It just sucks that that excitement of being able to release this to the fans just, and yeah, DCC webtoon coming. I personally, as a fan, am really excited for it and do plan on actually reviewing it here on the channel once it's out, but it has been leaked because someone fucked up.
You done messed up, Aaron!
But this week's episode of Fantasy News is brought to you by Wraithmarked Creative, not to actually try and sell you anything, but instead for a giveaway, for a proof copy of the book I art directed, a special edition of War of the Worlds. And really amazingly, this is actually going to be something they'll be doing bi-monthly or bi-weekly because it has two meanings, and that's stupid, going forward. For fairly obvious reasons that I myself also support, they don't want their business to be super dependent on Twitter going forward. For no specific reason, and if they actually hit their follower goal of hitting 17.5 thousand followers by the time the winner is announced Friday of next week, they will be doubling the number of proofs, doubling your chances of actually winning. So if you want to support a company that makes super high quality special editions, is trying to move away from a specific platform for, again, no specific reason, and enter to win of one of 24 proof editions of this special edition I worked on, all you have to do is go over and follow Wraithmarked on Instagram. It's that easy. We're not selling you shit right now. And I hope you enjoy. It's even sexy if you take the cover off. Ooh. Specifically, if you are like a rare book collector, bi-monthly chances to win a proof copy from a Wraithmarked edition, that's pretty awesome. I wish I could enter. Bryce, can I enter? Oh, I can just drive to your office and steal them. But in news that somehow flew under my radar, and I'm sad that it did, it's a couple of weeks old, but I don't care. I'm reaching into the depths of the past, plucking it and presenting it to you now. A sci-fantasy icon has had yet another scientific discovery named after it. And that is because a giant sea bug, that's a thing, has been named after Darth Vader after researchers noticed its face looked a little bit like the sci-fantasy icon. And here, I'll put it on my face now. Is this giving you Darth Vader? It's giving me, I get it, yeah. Now this wasn't discovered on like some sea voyage where they were scouring the depths of the yet to be explored ocean, and instead they just bought it at a Vietnamese market. And apparently that's how you can make scientific discoveries. Cool. Now this was being eaten as a local delicacy, and I must say myself, not to be culturally insensitive, but no thank you. I am not interested in consuming that. Though I don't. And I will say this has just added to my general fear of the ocean that has only gotten more substantial as I've gotten older, because there's a reason they call it a giant sea bug. It's bigger than you think. Did you think it would be this big? No, absolutely not. Oh my God. Why would this even be made? I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to go for God. Yeah. Why did you make the Vader bug? They found that thing, yeah. Yeah. Why make it? Why? Gabriel and I were just doing some Molly, and it seemed like a good idea. They're eating it. People are eating the thing. Oh, no way. Does it taste good? I don't know.
You shouldn't have made this.
Okay. Are you telling God that he made a mistake?
I'm a content
Creator. Of course I feel like I can tell God no. It's why I put my own merch on you in this skit. Oh, you sick freak. And I'm sorry. I am just too tired of talking about AI in the publishing space and feel so redundant covering these that I'm not going to get in depth here. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that there's some quickie news that is bigger I could get more into, but I'm going to make quickie news by saying that we have had it confirmed that purely AI-generated art can't get copyright protection according to the US Copyright Office. And books written by humans are going to be getting their own certification and then be listed in a US Authors Guild database that can be accessed by anyone. And so basically the US Authors Guild is going to be making it so that if you want to, as an author, you can have your book certified, written by a human, and added to their database for readers to then look at. And it is so sci-fi dystopian that I will be submitting, hopefully, my next book for a certified human certification. What is this world? But in response to a story we actually got into, I believe last week or the week before, we have seen some rumblings in the US lawmaker space in response to the sheer amount of piracy that is going on for specifically anime and manga. If you didn't see the episode, TLDR, there are anime piracy and manga websites that are now outperforming Disney Plus. No shit, that's true. But the Motion Picture Association, comprising Netflix, Disney, Amazon, Sony, and more, has backed a new bill bolstering efforts to ban access to anime live action, novel, music, and other forms of piracy sites in the US and potentially beyond. If enacted, copyright holders and exclusive licenses will be able to petition the US District Court to issue a preliminary order to certain US service providers, forcing them to block customer access to foreign piracy platforms. And those service providers would be like your internet provider. Now, interestingly, there's even a specific note here that the bill seems aimed at limiting the less tech savvy from accessing piracy sites, as it says that the blocking order cannot require service providers to take action that would prevent users from using virtual private networks. Two things in my mind in response to this. One, makes sense with how big piracy is as a problem in this space, that they would at least be trying to take a massive chunk out of it by enacting this bill. Granted, yeah, something as simple as a VPN probably gets you around it. And a lot of you, if you're watching like YouTube and stuff like that, certainly know about VPNs. But I think a lot of people underestimate how many out there still have no idea or can't be bothered to put a VPN on their device. Or maybe I'm wrong, and that is more common than I think. I just think if you're like online as much as me, an admittedly chronically online person, it's easy to overestimate how many people are willing to use something like a VPN to access stuff like this. It's really about dollars for them, and if they're able to make a big chunk difference and some piracy is still happening, they'll see it as a victory. The second angle, though, is there's a reason so much piracy is happening. The market to accessing this stuff is so scattered, so split. I mean, to watch all of Pokemon, there's that infamous post I was made aware of after I covered this last time where like you have to have like this many different service providers. And so I get that, yes, this is piracy, which is taking money from artists. That is bad. But I don't necessarily put all of the onus on the consumer. If you make the marketplace extraordinarily expensive and difficult to navigate, piracy is a natural response to that. And it's become so easy to access these pirating websites, I would guess a whole bunch of people don't even realize they're necessarily pirating it. Or if they do, they just don't care. It's not like a malicious, ooh, f the artist, I'm gonna go. It's as simple as someone putting like watch all of One Piece free online and clicking the first link because it's there and watching it. And I think that's specifically what they're trying to cut down on. But in an update to seeing him drop from his publisher for comics, Dark Horse, we have also seen that Neil Gaiman has been scrubbed from his agent's website, Casorado Ramsey, to the point where if you try and access previously available pages there, they just redirect you to a page not found. This is coming in addition to seeing him scrubbed from a Good Omens Kickstarter, and of course, a lot of the adaptation projects that are involving his works are now either shutting down, as we previously covered, or trying to remove his name as much as possible while they get like a finishing season out. I feel terrible for people who got employed by working on them, and I specifically hope all of them are able to find continued work after showing their genuinely great efforts to realize these stories despite who they're from. And in a late night fantasy news update, in 3 separate states, Neil Gaiman is now being sued for $1 million by his accuser for trafficking, which, yeah, all of that was there in the initial reporting on this, and because I do still feel wildly unqualified to talk about this stuff, I will leave it there, but it's going to be kept up with here on the channel as things develop. But shaking that off, I'd like to get into a more wholesome story here. I don't often bring in Kickstarters, especially because I feel like a while ago it got too many too fast, and I started getting asked to cover them left, right, up, and down. But this one was posted in the Discord server, and it was so charming. I'm not getting paid for this. I just genuinely want to talk about it. There is a book shopping board game being made and funded on Kickstarter that's already hit all of its goals. That is adorable. Called A Place for All My Books, it seems to be a board game built around getting your like social battery meter up so that you can go out and buy books to then come home and have on your board game bookshelf. And that is so disgustingly cute. I love it. And the fact that it is wholesome as hell, straight cozy vibes, but being published by something called Smirk in Dagger adds a bit of irony. But after so late in the game, see what I mean about this being a thickum episode of fantasy news? Let's go ahead and shift gears into the adaptation news we've gotten this week, because we had some even more photos drop for the upcoming season 3 of the Wheel of Time, featuring Tenchiko, Nynaeve, Min, and Matt, costumed to high hell in the cultural garb. Apparently this is sharing a location where we actually saw Black Sails used for its production, specifically a beach and dock. And if you've been in Wheel of Time circles, the jokes have been everywhere that in the first 2 seasons, Matt's costuming was like, he was just in those rags and he didn't get to change much. And now it's looking like he's about to walk whatever that one famous fashion show thing is. Oh, that would have been a funny, smooth thing if I remembered it. What's it called? The Met Gala? Met Gala. That's it. I ruined it, but I said it. And I think it's like finally registered to me how amazing this next project we're going to talk about is likely going to be. And that is because, yes, as we've known for a while now, Christopher Nolan's next big project is going to be an adaptation of the Odyssey. And on top of that already cool news, we have seen that additional names like Elliot Page, Himesh Patel, Bill Irwin, and Samantha Morton have signed on to be a part of this project. But that's not the end of the Elliot Page news, because Page Boy Productions is set to adapt Beyond Two Souls, a video game that was actually starring Elliot Page way back in the day and also had names like Christian Bale attached. The game is described as following Jodie Holmes, a young woman with extraordinary supernatural abilities who becomes entangled in a web of government conspiracy and otherworldly forces. And it's told apparently in a non-linear format, which I would assume this adaptation will embrace. Are we going full Memento meets Chronicle? I'm putting that together as someone who has not played the game. Let me know if it's accurate at all in the comments down below. I assume not. But if you recently have been feeling a bit nostalgic and wanting to just get some full-on early 2000s vibes, I highly recommend you go and check out the opening credits that were released for Netflix's upcoming Devil May Cry adaptation. It is, and I want to make this clear, the purest distillation of early 2000s like Limp Bizkit, punk, gothic culture I have seen. I don't really have a lot of opinions on a Devil May Cry adaptation. I played the games. They were fine. Definitely a product of their time. They don't stand out as exceptional. They were just like, yeah, a good game I played when I was a kid. An adaptation, sure. But seeing them lean this heavily and being like a product of that era kind of works. Like, it's like, damn, all right, if this opening credits is supposed to set the tone, it's no Dan to Dan opening credits, but it's a bop, it's a banger. And if any immortals happen to be watching this episode of Fantasy News, I'm happy to say we have some nostalgia for you as well, because we have had a first look of Oscar Isaac in Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of Frankenstein. And this is, like, make it Make it an adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I think that's what they're gonna do. I really hope that's what they're gonna do. And Oscar Isaac, I think, is phenomenal casting for Dr. Frankenstein, but there's not really a whole lot of roles that if I heard Oscar Isaac was playing it, I'd be against. I'm trying to think of one now. I don't think Oscar Isaac would be the best pick for Vin, but he'd still be an interesting one. We also had a cinematic teaser drop for an upcoming animation we'll be getting for the Warhammer franchise. So if you would like to see some vibes that are along the lines of blood, go ahead and check that out, linked in the description down below. And then in the final piece of fantasy news we'll be covering here today, if you are in the middle of watching The Expanse, I have some very bad news. And that is because the first 3 seasons are set to be leaving Amazon when this article was posted 11 days from now. That was January 27th, so -6, in 4 days. So binge quickly. And this is for all the reasons you have probably come to expect digital media to be extremely frustrating to consume. There just seems to be some right stuff going on. All the seasons after season 3 will still be available. You can get it physically, which I encourage any mega fan to do. But maybe this will be resolved. Maybe it'll pop up on another streaming platform. Who knows? But just a reminder to go ahead and follow Wraithmarked Creative over on Instagram for a chance to win. Be sure to go over and grab some Daniel B. Greene merch if you want to get the allegedly tee or some plot armor, as well as any of these other designs we're featuring. I specifically like the bookworm one. Come on, this is a banger. Look at that, that's awesome. Good job, Caleb Hart, directing the merch as always. Thank you so much. Have a good one, love you, bye!